Okay, we're on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the top of the new Mishnah, Masnisin. Misha Nigmar Dino Yivarach, somebody who finished his din, that means Bezdin said, okay, this is the Gemar din, and so is Chayev. Varach, and he ran away after the Gemar din before they could punish him. Uval lefnei Yosef Bezdin, and now he came back. He was brought back in front of that Bezdin. Ein seishmas dina. They don't start again and reopen the din and say maybe it's 10 years later, maybe something came up. No, once he had a Gemar din, and if he comes back to that Bezdin, it's not so. You don't reopen the din. If two people ever stand up in a bezdin and say, we testify that Yankel, he was his din was finished in this and this bezdin, Uplani Edav, and Beryl and Shmerel were the Edim. Hareze Yaharig, then the person and they say that the Gemar din was from Isa. Hareze Yaharig, the person gets killed. In other words, you don't go and reopen the din over there either. If you have the Edim say that there was already a psak, then the new bezdin will just be mekayim that psak. Sanhedrin Nayeges Ba'aretz V'Chatzlaretz. The Sanhedrin, that means Batei Dinim, even of Dina Nefashes, doesn't mean the Sanhedrin Agadol in Yerushalayim. It means that you could even have a bezdin of 23, and they could kill somebody even Chatzlaretz. Period. Sanhedrin Ha'Reges Echad B'Shavua Nikras Chevlanis. The Tanakama holds that a Sanhedrin that kills somebody once in a Shavua is a 7-year cycle. Like we had in Sanhedrin, we had the Shemitah was called a Shavua. Once in a 7-year cycle, that's called a Chevlanis. It's a Mechabel. It's destructive, right? It's called a destructive bezdin. That's too much. Bezdin shouldn't be killing people that often. And we saw this in Sanhedrin, which you can see it in Makkos more, but we saw it very openly in Sanhedrin, how difficult it is, halachically, to give somebody a misa. We said just from the halachas, straw, right? It's come out, not shaykh. So if a bezdin kills somebody once in 7 years, it's called a chavlanis. That's what Tanakam says. Rabbi ben Azariah Aimer, echad l'shivim shana, once in 70 years. Rabbi Tafin and Rabbi Kiva Aimrim, Rabbi Tafin and Rabbi Kiva say, Ilu hayinu b'Sanhedrin le'nerog adam ya'ilam. If we were in the Sanhedrin, nobody would have been killed. And the Gemara is going to explain, they would have come up with questions and made it that mamash nobody could get misa. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says back to Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Tarfon, Afhein marben shef kedam b'Yisrael. They are going to be marba, increased people who are killing murderers in Klal Yisrael, because people will know that they can get away with it. So there has to be a balance. I mean, and if you see, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel didn't say this to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah or to the Tanakama that said 7 years or 70 years, because Vice Tachais, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel agrees that's still a deterrent. People know you person go to Bezdin and get killed, but if they go like Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Tarfon and nobody ever gets killed, there's no deterrent in what should be keeping a person from doing something they shouldn't do. Gemara, not only there's something they shouldn't do, but specifically Sheif Chedamim. I don't know if you can be Mudayik this or not. The Gemara doesn't say it, but maybe you could say that the other Averis that are bein Adam L'Makayim. Okay. You can say that's between the Rebbeinu Shalom will go punish them. But if Sheif Chedamim, they're going and killing somebody, right? So it's not right. You can't have that kind of lack of social equity of people knowing that they can't go and do things that just plain killing people right and left. Zak the Gemara. Gemara's medayik from the Mishnah. The Mishnah said somebody who finished his din, and there was a Gemar din, Bezdin Paskin, that he should get killed, and then he came in front of that Bezdin. They don't reopen the case; they just full of sack. Zak the Gemara l'fnei Yosef Bezdin hu de'ein seisrin. They don't reopen the case in front of that Bezdin. But if it's in front of a different bezdin, it's mashma. The other bezdin says, "Hey, we don't know what happened by that bezdin, so we're going to reopen the din and relitigate this to see whether or not the person's chayav misa." That's the mashmas from the Reisha. Hakani Seifa, but the Seifa says, "Kol makim, any place, any bezdin, sheyamdu shnayim, two people get up as edim." And they say, "Need manu asish pleni shnigmer dina bevestin pleni."
Later on, you mean years later?
What?
Years later, they come.
Could be the next day. Could be 10 years later, right?
But no way of knowing that. Bezos no way of knowing 20 years later, 20 years before he was convicted over there. Now he comes to.
So these two Eidim come and say,
come to that
Bezdin, right. And they say we were there when Bezdin, I don't know, Rabbi Landisman's Bezdin in Muncie convicted him and said Chayav Misa, and now they're coming to Rabbi Slatus's Bezdin in Tom's River, and they say we can testify that he was Chayav Misa. It was 20 years ago, right? So The Sefer says, "Kol makom sham d'shnayim v'yemru midim anos pleni shnei wardina bevestin pleni upleni edav." We were there. We know that so and so had his gmar din that he was chayiv misa in this bestin, and these people were his edim. Harei zanerg, he gets killed. So then it's mashma that you're not seiser his din, even if it's not a noisei bestin. You never reopen the case. Right? So the Reish's mashma, you only don't reopen the case if it was in that bestin. The Sefer's mashma, you don't reopen the case at all, ever, whether it was in this bestin or another bestin. Amar Abaya loikash, it's not shver. Kan beretz Yisrael, kan b'chutz la'aretz. There's a difference. One is in Eretz Yisrael, one's chutz la'aretz, and the Gemara is going to explain. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Distoi Yaimer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Chatach. Rabbi Yehuda ben Distoi says the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Chatach. Baruch min ha'aretz l'chutz la'aretz. Let's say someone had a Gemar din, and he was going to get killed in Besdin, and he ran away. He was at Besdin Yerushalayim, and he ran away to America, right? Ein seisnas dinai. Then the Besdin over here does not reopen the case. If two Eidim come into the Besdin over here, and they say, hey, we know that you were in Yerushalayim, and we saw that this and this Besdin, Paskin Yerushalayim Misa, and so were his Eidim, then the Besdin over here and Tom's River will claim the din and kill him. But if let's say he was in the Besdin in Tom's River and they made the psak over here and said he's chayiv misa over here, and then he ran to Eretz Yisrael, and now two Eidim came in from the Besdin Yerushalayim and said we saw Yankel that he was he convicted, he had the Gemar din back in America. They do reopen the case. And they do start from scratch. Why? Because of the schus of Eretz Yisrael. Because of the schus of Eretz Yisrael, he has the schus of Eretz Yisrael with him. Maybe he'll have a schus to escape his misa. They'll come up with a reason to pater him. Hear that? Okay.
Like
what does that mean? What's the schus? What's
I can't tell you for sure, but I was thinking that maybe the pshat is that he right now is in a mitzvah situation. Right? Before he lived in America, you don't have a mitzvah of Yishuv Tom's River. But when you're in Tom's River going to Eretz Yisrael, now it's in Eretz Yisrael, then you have a mitzvah Yishuv Eretz. Wherever you are now, you're a new person, you have a new schus in your mitzvah. Now that you have that, maybe it'll be enough. Even though the guy's a convicted murderer, the Gemara says that maybe now with the schus of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, that'll be enough. That Besdin will find the schus they shouldn't get killed. Hear that? Okay. Yep. Okay, the Gemara says weiter. Sanhedrin neheges chulu. The Gemara says that the Mishnah said that Sanhedrin is both in Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. No, and Mili, how do you know this? The Tana Rabbanan, the Rabbanan learned in a brisa. Vayu eila lachem l'chukas mishpat l'derei seichem, and the pasuk continues b'chol moshvei seichem, that these should be for you for the halachas of mishpat in your generations. And again, it doesn't say anything more. It says it on the side. B'chol moshvei seichem, in all the places you live. Lamandu, we learned l'Sanhedrin sheneheges ba'aretz v'chutz La'aretz. That Sanhedrin is in wherever you live, whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or Chutz La'aretz, you always can have a Sanhedrin. Imkein matam leimer b'sharecha. Really, it's b'chol sharecha. The guy says. The pasuk says in the beginning of Parsha Shoftim v'shoitrim titin l'cha b'chol sharecha. You should put judges and shoitrim is also policemen, but it says b'chol sharecha. B'chol sharecha is in Eretz Yisrael. Sharecha is your gates of Eretz Yisrael, like Sharei Tzion, right? But it's mashma not Chutz La'aretz. And for the Gemara, this is what the difference is. In your Eretz Yisrael, you do it in every region, and then in every region, you also make a Besdin in every city. But in Chutz La'aretz, you only make it, you don't make b'sharecha, you don't make it in every city, but you do make it in every region, and that's b'chol mashvei seichem, every region should have a Sanhedrin. But you don't do in every city. Okay. Sanhedrin ha'ereges v'chulu. The Mishnah said that a Sanhedrin that kills once in 7 years is called a chavlanis. And then the Mishnah said that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says once in 70 years. But he doesn't say once in 70 years what. So that's Gemara's question. Does he say that once in 70 years is called a chavlanis? Even that is too often. Or maybe you're saying no, once in 7 years is normal. Okay. Once in 7 years is chavlanis. Once in 7 years is normal. Teiko.
The take only goes in the last thing we just said. Not in the whole thing.
It's on Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, right? It's Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah saying 70 years is okay, is normal, or 70 years is still too much, right? No, that's the Gemara's Shaila.
He never specified.
In the Mishnah, he just says echad l'shivim shana. Period. Doesn't say echad l'shivim shana what, right? So he doesn't say what. Okay. Zakt the Gemara weiter. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Kiva Emrim, Elohinu, Chulu, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Kiva said if we were there, no one would ever get killed. In fact, Mar Hechi Avavdi, what would they do? Rabbi Yechon, Rabbi Lazar, Amri Tavayu. Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Lazar both say, Re'isim Treifa Harag, Shalim Harag. Did you see the person that they killed? You saw Reuven kill Shimon? Was he a treifa or not? Maybe he had some sort of wound that you couldn't see from outside, and he would have died. Right. Can you prove that he killed somebody who was a shalim?
He's still a murderer.
No. If someone is a treifa, it's a halacha of a dead person, right?
You're allowed to walk over and kill him?
No, you're not allowed to walk over and kill him. But if you did, you're not chayv misa. Okay. But
we had this in the Gemara a few months ago.
We did have this in the Gemara, yes. So he's saying, they say, and unless the Edom could answer, oh no, we absolutely know, we're doctors and we did an autopsy, right? Then they're going to be putter because they have injected enough suffix into the situation. They cannot say for sure, we know that Reuven who killed Shimon didn't kill Shimon who's a treifa. Maybe Shimon was a treifa. We don't know. Ravashi says it takes it a step further. You could say, no, we did an autopsy. We checked him out. We checked all this money treifa, and he's not a treifa, right? Dilma b'makam saif nekev hava. You could say, do you know maybe Reuven killed Shimon? You're saying Reuven killed Shimon. He took a sword and chopped his head off, right? Maybe exactly at the place where the cut was, right? There was already a cut there, and he was going to be a treifa al stat cut, right? And what?
He was a treifa.
He was a treifa al stat cut. And now the person killed him in exactly that place, and you cannot tell whether or not he was a treifa before. Maybe he was a treifa before, and since he was a treifa before,
never be wrong.
Yeah, you can't kill him, right? Now, what would Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Tarfon do by Be'elas Erva? Abai and Rav Amri Tarvayu Isim Kemichol b'Shveferes. Rabbi and Rav both say that they would say, did you see the Maisa be a mamish like a Michol b'Shveferes, like a makeup thing going into the package of makeup? So mamish saw the Maisa, and that's very uncommon. They wouldn't be able to see that. But what about the Rabbanan who say you don't need this? They would put somebody to death every 7 years or whatever. If you see them acting in a way like people are doing BR, being Masana, then that's enough.
It's the only assumption. You never really...
Right, you don't see, but Shmuel says that that's enough. Hajjan lachet today then. Okay. Now we go to Galas. Somebody who kills a nefesh b'shgaga, he kills a person by mistake. Then he gets Galas, he runs to one of the Arei Miklat, and he has to stay there until the Kohen Gadol dies, and then he could go out free. But it's a very, very specific cases that the Torah says that a person could go to a Arei Miklat. It has to be in a certain way. We're going to say Derech Yehuda, the Mishnah is about to say right now. But also, if there's certain situations where it's too much of a pshia or too much of an inus, either way, then a person doesn't go to Galas. So that's what this parak is about. Somebody was rolling with a sort of not really a roller. It's the way Rashi explains it is that you have in those days you used to have flat roofs, at least in the Mediterranean. We didn't have a lot of rain, but they still had some rain. So what they do is they put a layer of like tar or cement on top of the roof, and they'd have to make it just like if you go on a highway ever. If you pay attention to a highway or even most roads, you'll see if it's in good condition, you'll see it's higher in the middle than on the sides. You know that?
The water drains.
Yeah, so the water could drain to the side and doesn't collect in the middle while you're driving, and the person could spin out.
Like that.
Yeah, that's how. There's a lot of chachma involved in making the street right.
To do it correctly.
Yeah, you have to do it correctly. So in those days, what they would do the same thing on the roof. They would go and take a layer of cement and put that on and make it lower on one end and higher on the other end so that the water would drain off. You have good drainage. And they would take a sort of, imagine it's sort of like a stick on the floor, right? And it has a stick sticking out from the stick, perpendicular to it. And you hold that, it's sort of like a trowel, or you ever see like the big mops that they use to clean a shuls, the big brooms, right? It's basically a long pole with a flat thing at the end. That's basically what they're doing. And you're going like this back and forth, up and down to smooth the cement. Now, when you're ma'agel b'magela means that you're pushing away from you, and the Mishnah is going to say in a second, Moishech b'magel is you're pulling it towards you. So you're pushing it away from you.
It's the same halacha either way.
No.
Why?
Because one is derech yirida, one is the way that you're pushing downward.
When the mice
one
are
is
going
derech
back and forth,
aliyah.
you're still trying to smooth out the
You're trying
roof,
to,
right?
but are you going up or are you going down? The Gemara said, the pasuk says, "Vayapel olav," that he fell on him. He did the mice of killing somebody with shegeg. Right. So if you're pulling it towards him and somehow it slips out of your fingers and then falls out, you were going upwards with the thing and it fell. So you're not going to be chayiv galus. But if you're pushing away and then it falls down, right? Then you're going downwards, and then the person will be chayiv galus. So hayim agel b'magela, somebody who's pushing away from him down the slope with the magela, v'nafla alav, and it fell on the person v'argasa and killed him. That he will be chayiv galus. Hayim shalshal b'chavis v'nafla alav v'argasa. He was lowering a bucket. And while he's lowering it on a rope, the rope slipped out of his fingers and fell on somebody and killed him. Or if he was going down a ladder, and he slipped off the ladder and fell on somebody, and killed him. All these cases are a goyla. Then the person goes to galus. If somebody was pulling the magela towards him and it slipped out of his hand and then fell back down and hit a person and killed him, or somebody was pulling upwards with the bucket, and the rope split, and fell on somebody and killed him. Or somebody goes going up a ladder and then he slipped, and the thing fell on him, varga, and killed him. Then the person does not go.
He's not going to go. He's in between.
He's correct. He's not chayiv misa.
What do you do with him?
He's got a problem. He doesn't deserve the kapara of galus, but he has to come up with some sort of kapara, right? We had the Gemara right over here. On
people do accent, they pick up things on the painters, they're picking up something or dropping it, it's the same thing, it falls and falls.
Yeah.
Lowering it or picking it up.
Yeah, so that's exer sakasa. It has to be by below. But when we had a case on Daf Yomi Makkos where somebody killed somebody by mistake, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai killed somebody because he thought that that they held that you have to get the person that Eidzim is not killed unless they were Makayim the din, that the person got killed because of their testimony. And we paskin Hargu Eina Ragin, we paskin if they kill the person, they don't get killed, but it has to have the Gemar din. So in that case, there was a case where it was just the Gemar din, and he went and he killed the aid, but it was only one aid, because only one aid was Huzam. And he forgot or didn't know the halacha, that you don't kill, you don't do kasher zamam unless you're actually zamu shneim, until they're both Muslim. So he killed him by mistake. And Shimon Shatach said to him that you messed up. You killed somebody by mistake. And it says, Kol Yomav, first of all, Kibbul Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai she'einu me'royal l'fnei Shimon Shatach. He was makabel on himself that he's not going to paskin unless he's in Rabbi Shimon Shatach's presence to make sure if that makes a mistake, Rabbi Shimon Shatach will catch him. Every day he would go and prostrate himself on the kever of that aid. Right, exactly. So you see, it's not possible to kill somebody, even if there was no gullus in that situation, right? That was not a case of gullus, right? That was just a case that he had him executed, right? But and it wasn't the shegi, right? But he needed a kapara. Okay, so Zaklal, what's the general rule? Kol derech yiridasai gaila. If it's the derech of going downwards, person goes to galus. V'shleib derech yiridasai. And if it's not the derech of going downwards, ain't a gaila, it doesn't go to galus. And we're going to see in the Gemara, there's always going to be, whenever we say Zaklal, the Mishnah is coming to try to be marba in another case. Gemara, Manahani Mili. How do you know this pasuk, this halacha, that you're supposed, it has to be the downwards way and not the upwards way? Amar Shmuel says that. Amar Kad pasuk says, Vayapel olav vayamas. He fell on him and he died, or had made it fall on him and it died. That achiyipol derech nefila, it has to fall down on him in the way of going downwards. Okay, Tanaraban, the Rabban learned. Now we're going to learn a lot of the conditions that we're going to need to say that somebody's chayiv galus or to say that somebody's patr galus, depending on the situation. The pasuk says, the pasuk says there's a couple of psukim over here. So one pasuk is, one pasuk is v'shkaga, and then the other pasuk is, okay, we're going to, here it is. So we're going to start with those two psukim. Gemara says, when it says if a person did it by mistake, this excludes someone who did it on purpose. Bivli das, but other pasuk says he did it without knowledge. Prat l'miskaven, it excludes somebody who intended to do it. So these two, Mason and miskaven, sound pretty similar. Shkaga and bevlida sound pretty similar. So what's going on over here? In fact, the Gemara, Amar, on the side we changed the gears to Rabbah. I'm sorry, I skipped the line. In fact, the Gemara, Mezid Pshita, if you say that he did it with Mezid, of course he's not going to Galus. Baktalahu, he's Chayav Misa. Rabba says, Ema Prat Laimer Mutter. This is coming to exclude somebody who says it's Mutter. Somebody who says that, in other words, he Pashat thought it's Mutter to go and kill somebody. Okay? Maybe this is the case like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai. Right? He said that he thought he was mechayiv to kill the person, right?
Maybe it's a treifa.
Huh? Well, that's not going to be mutter. Or maybe he thought it's mutter to kill a treifa.
Help him out.
Okay? Maybe.
A guy murder or something.
What was that?
Talking about a dying or talking about
well, no. In the case of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai would have been not Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai himself. Would have been the actual executioner, right? Who went and chopped his head off. And gave him that would be an amir mutter, right? So Amalei Abaye, if Abaye said to Rabbi, Yamir Mutter Anasu, if he's an Amir Mutter, he's an Anas. What's he supposed to do? There's no way to protect him.
He really thought
it was what to do. Amalei Shani Amir Mutter Karv Lamezid. Rabbi holds, I hold that Amir Mutter is Karv Lamezid, who it's close to Mezid, and therefore the pasuk had to say that that it's a case of Amir Mutter, and still you're not going to go to Galus. Bevlidas, then the pasuk said bevlidas without knowledge. Prat l'miskaven to exclude somebody who's intending to do it. In fact, the more miskaven, he's intended to kill somebody. Pshita b'aktalahu is chayav misa. Amarabba prat l'miskaven largas a behema vargas adam. This is coming. The miskaven is he wanted to kill a behema, right?
He shot the behema.
He shot the behema and he killed the person. Lenachri wanted to kill a guy. V'haragasi Yisrael and he killed the yid. Whether or not you allowed to kill a guy, you're pashni not allowed to kill a guy. Pashtas. But you're certainly, if you intended to kill a guy, you wouldn't be chayav misa, and killing a yid would be. L'neifel, he wanted to kill a neifel, somebody who was born in such a way that he wouldn't last 30 days. The baby wasn't healthy enough to last 30 days. Ben Kayam, and he killed somebody who was Ben Kayam and not a neifel, and therefore, in all these cases, he wouldn't have been. He's not he's miskaven, but he's still not going to go to Galus. All these cases, he needs more of a kapara than Galus can give him. That's the case of here. Now the Rabbanan learned the following Brisa, and now it's going to say a lot more of the conditions. Im befesa prat l'keren zavis. So the pasuk says, "Im befesa b'lo eva hadafa." If befesa means close, Rashi says samach, very, very. We translate it suddenly, but something that's sudden means it's right near you, right? So im befesa b'lo eva, without hatred hadafa, he pushed him. So the Gemara darshans that first part of the pasuk. Im befesa prat l'keren zavis. This is to exclude keren zavis. Keren zavis is like this: you have Yankel walking along the street, and Beryl walking along another street. And Yankel is, in kindergarten you learn you don't walk with the scissors out, right? He didn't know that. Yankel never learned that in kindergarten. He's walking with the knife and it's going like this. What? For Nizakan he's going to be chayiv. The question is if he's chayiv galus or not. For sure he's chayiv of galus. Let's say he didn't kill the guy, he's for sure going to be chayiv nezik tzarek b'shem v'shavaishas. Right? So Yankel's carrying the knife like this, and Beryl's walking along like this, and they bump into each other at the corner. They didn't see either of them, each other coming, and Yankel kills Beryl. So that's not considered befesa. Befesa is that you're walking along directly towards each other.
And you wanted to kill him.
Now you wanted to kill him. He killed him by mistake. You killed him by mistake. But Karen Zavis is sort of a roundabout way that it happened. And the pasuk says it has to be befesa. It has
unavoidable.
To be yes, unavoidable is a good word.
Maybe walking straight, it is avoidable. Yeah. Right? You're walking towards the guy.
Avoidable is not the right word for it. Rashi uses the language of besamach. Besamach means it happened right near there. It was something that was straightforward, I guess.
So was he doing it on purpose or not?
No, he didn't do it on purpose. Either way, he didn't do it on purpose. Either way, he did not do it on purpose. He guy's carrying along a knife in a shusarabim and just walking down the street, and the other guy's there, and then he's tripped and fell, right? That would be fine. That would be Karen
Zavis in this case, right?
Karen Zavis is different because that's sort of like with it's not samach. It's sort of, it's like my son was once driving down Clifton, and he was driving, he had the right of way, everything was perfect, and somebody went coming down on I think it was 4th, and T-boned him against the light. Right, the guy ran the red and T-boned him. Baruch Hashem, everyone was okay except both cars, and turned out the guy who T-boned him was my chavrusa like 20 years before, and okay, don't ask. And it was 1 a.m, and okay, but that's not that's a sort of like out of the blue.
Right.
That's not besamach that Rashi says. That's not straightforward, right?
Avoid
two cars going like this, right, and hitting each other. That will be befesa. Okay, so befesa is prat l'karen zavus, to exclude the case of the corner. B'loi eva, without hatred, prat l'seine. That is excluding a seine, excluding somebody who hates the guy. If you know that Reuven killed Shimon, quote unquote, b'shaygig, but Reuven hates Shimon's guts, right? And the Gemara is going to talk about exactly what the shear for that is. Then we assume the hater may well have killed him on purpose. So that the hater does not go to galus. Hadafai means he pushed him. Shadachvai begufai. It means that he pushed him with his body by mistake. That would be considered enough to be considered, right? The guy, he knocked him down and killed him. That would be chayav for galus. Or he threw it onto him. Lahavi yerida shitzarech aliyah. We already said vayapel. We said it has to be a downward going downward. But hishlachalav threw on him is coming to tell you a new case. When so Yerida, that's a tzerach aliyah. When he's going down and he hits somebody on the way down, even though he was going down to go up. Let's say you want to pick something up, right? So how do you do it? You go over to the stender and you bend down, and then you go, you give it a big zest.
Bend that's not
When he was going down, even though he was going down so as to go up.
We're doing a ladder, the same thing.
What?
It's called going up a ladder, holding the thing.
And we're going to get to the ladder. We're just going to talk about the ladder extensively. Hang on with the ladder. But the point is that if it's, even though it's you would think that a yerida letzerach aliyah is like an aliyah, no, it's not. That's considered also vayapel. Blitzdia, without hunting. In other words, he wasn't trying to get the guy. We're dashing this. Tziyah usually means hunting. We're dashing this as a lashon of tzad, I should say, side. That it's excluding where he was planning to throw he was going to throw a hatchet at this side, and it went to another side. So he ended up doing something entirely different than what he intended to do. He was throwing to the left and went to the right. Then he's not going to be chayiv galas. V'asher leitzada, and then the pasuk says elsewhere that a person who didn't also tzada, prat l'meskaven l'zuk v'zarek arba. The case of asher leitzada is like this: that normally a person who is throwing, let's say throwing something, and he's
aiming for that guy.
He's trying to throw. Let's say I was going to say shnayim and arba. Let's do a little more realistic case. Trying to throw something 20 feet away. He didn't chop. There was somebody standing there, right? So he wanted to throw 20 feet away. He hit 20 feet away. There was a guy standing there. It was going downwards. He's going to be chayiv galas, right? But if he wanted to throw 10 feet away and it slipped and it went 20 feet away, or Rashi says, according to Rabbi Tzal Renishberg, he wanted to throw 10 feet away and it slipped and went further, went 20 feet away, and there was somebody standing in the wrong spot and now it got killed. In those cases, that will not be Vashar Leitzada, and those cases, the person does not go to Galas.
The same was terrible.
Yeah, in other words, the person was to Galas and he was doing what he tried to do, and that killed somebody. Not he did something entirely different than what he tried to do. Right. Pasuk elsewhere says that a person comes onto his friend in a forest, and he kills him by mistake. So Mar says, just like a forest is public property, and both the person who gets killed and the person who killed him have permission to be there. Also, in any situation that for going to Galus has to be a place where both the murderer by mistake and the murdered person have rishus to go there. So that means that if, let's say, the person, what's it called, the stand your ground rules, right? The person comes into somebody else's property, they say there's no rishus to be in there, and the guy kills him by mistake. Not if he kills him on purpose.
The owner of the property.
The owner of the property kills him by mistake. I'm a carpenter.
Protecting your thing.
No, not even that. I just use that as a mashal, but that's not really a good mashal. I'm a carpenter, right? Right? Or somebody, Yankel is a mechanic, okay? And he has a machine shop. And he's got all sorts of heavy power equipment.
Don't go in there. Don't go in there.
Don't go in there. Now, if a guy went in there and the person had no idea that somebody's coming and he's doing his stuff, right? And something shoots out and kills the guy, it's not his fault, right? So that's a situation where it's not like Yar, and therefore the person will be patur from Galus. Zak the Marvaiter. By Minera Bavahu. Rabbi Yechon had a shaila from Rabbi Yechon. And now, Rabbi Yitzi, you brought down the situation of the Yar, of the ladder. We're going to talk about that ladder. A guy was going upwards on a ladder, and we said that going upwards on a ladder, he'll be patur. Going downwards, he'll be chayiv galus. But in this case, the guy was going up, and the rung of the ladder slipped from underneath him, and it went down, and fell, and killed something.
The rung killed somebody, or?
The rung fault.
Not him with the thing he was holding.
I believe it was the rung.
Okay.
Right? Otherwise it would have been nafal.
The wrong's not to kill somebody.
What?
The wrong's not to kill somebody?
It's a heavy rung. Okay. Whether it's a baby. I don't know.
No, I'm curious. Okay.
What's the halacha? Ki hagavna aliyahu ayiridahi. Is this situation an aliyah because he's been going upwards, or yirida because lemaisa, as he's going upwards, he pushed the rung downwards?
Like you said before.
Right. So Amalek for Nagata be read the Shitzar Chaliyah. He said, no, we already touched upon this because we said before in the Brisa that a Yerida that's a Tzarech Aliyah, when you go, is included is a Yerida, and therefore he's Chayiv. In fact, the Gemara, that's a Pashat Esvei, Asvikasha Zaklal. Kol Shabbaderach Yerida, this is the last sentences in our Mishnah. If you're talking about going downward, if it's going the normal downward way, person goes to Galus. If it's not going downwards, he doesn't go to Galus. Now, we always say when there's a Vizak cloud, it's coming to include something. What's the case? When we say it's not going downwards, what are we trying to include and say, this is a case that would seem to be going downwards, but it's really not going downwards, and you're going to not go to Galus. It doesn't make sense to say that it's coming to include this case where the guy's going up a ladder and he pushes down on the rung and it falls down, but he's going derech aliyah, and that's called not derech yirida, and he'll be patur.
A general question, if I may. All these things happen. How do we find that he's chayv out? Who tells him the Bezdin interviews him and said what happened exactly, or Adam see what happened? Like you go up and down. It's a very tight window of what happens. I'm saying a very tight window of what the chiluk is, right?
Right. Good question.
How do you know?
I hear the question. I think the Gemara is going to, from the Gemaras later on, that talk about what the exact mahalach of the.
So what is the line? Tells going up, going down.
The Gemara is going to talk later about the Mishnah, and the Gemara later on going to talk about what's the procedure of the person going to Galus. I think from there we might have a better idea to answer your question, right? But I didn't get up to that Gemara yet. But I know the Gemara does talk about that procedure, so maybe hopefully we'll get the answer then. Okay, so now the Gemara is saying we bring a raya from the Mishnah. The Mishnah said Zaklal that if it's downwards, the person goes to Galus. If it's not downwards, that means upwards. Pashtus, it's not going to Galus. The Gemara says if it's not downwards, you don't go to Galus. It makes sense to say that we're talking about a case of terech yiridasai. Of when going down up on the ladder and pressing down on the rung. So the Gemara says Ul Tameich. You're telling me that I could learn this out from the Mishnah and therefore say that that's the case where it'll be chayiv, not like what Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Vo, that it's like a derech read the shitzar chaliyah. You're going to so he said back to him, according to what you're saying, what are you going to learn from the first half of the zaklal? The first half of the zaklal is kol sheb derech yudasei l'suyimai. It says kol sheb derech yudasei. If it's going downwards, you're going to be chayiv galus l'suyimai. What's that coming to include? That's not coming to include this case. Elo l'suyi katzav. It must be coming to include a butcher. We'll talk about it in a second. Over here also, you could say it's talking about a butcher. In other words, we're going to say, without saying yet what the case of the butcher is, when it says, is talking about a case of a butcher. If is talking about a different case of a butcher. And the Gemara is going to explain what those two are. But you have no raya that the Zakal is coming to say this case, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan is very comfortable saying, no, the case of going up on a ladder and pushing down on the rung, and the rung goes and kills somebody is considered Yerida Shitarech Aliyah, and it'll be chayiv. Now, what's the case of Katzav? The Tanya learned in the Brisa. Katzav Shem Katzev. A butcher who is butchering, right? So I don't know if you've ever seen it. They have big meat cleavers. They're banging them all over the place. That right to chop through a bone takes a lot of power, right?
Going up is really going down.
Right.
Chopping a tree,
The axe.
Right. So, but a butcher it's even more because you're not going sideways. You're going straight up and down, right? And you have to do really hard. That's why they have the cleavers are so heavy. The meat cleavers, they want to be able to chop.
Yeah,
they're heavy. They're big. They're like the sort of rectangle knives they
I
have.
keep that in my house.
You don't have them in your house. Yeah, but I believe those are heavy, and that's because they need a lot of
power
of inertia to go in and break through the bone. So the Gemara says like this: the Tanya you learned in a brisa. Katzav shem bekatzev. Butcher who was butchering, chopping meat. Tanachada, we learned in one brisa. The fun of chayev la'achar of pater. Forwards he's going to be chayev galus. Backwards he's pater from galus. Tani idach, different brisa said the reverse. La'achar of chayev, the fun of pater. Backwards he's going to be chayev, but forward he'll be pater. Tani idach, and we learned the third brisa that says bein lefan of bein la'achar of chayev. Whether he's going forward or backwards, he's going to be chayev. But Tani idach, we learned the fourth brisa that says bein lefan of bein la'achar of pater. Both ways he'll be pater. So we're a little mixed up over here, right? Right? This is four contradictory brisas. Gemara says, "V'lo kasha, it's not fair. Kan be yirida shel fanav v'aliyah shel achrav. Kan b'aliyah shel fanav yirida shel achrav. Kan be yirida shel fanav shel achrav. Kan b'aliyah shel fanav shel achrav." What does this mean? This means that any case where it says that he's chayiv, it's when he's going downwards. And any case where it says that he's pater, he's going upwards.
In case that what?
That says he's pater, he's going upwards. So let's say the first case of the brisa. The brisa was tanachada, the fun of chayiv l'achrav pater. That forward he's going to be chayiv. He's taking the knife and he's going like this, right? That's forward, right? And l'achrav pater is he goes like this. That's derech aliyah. Then he's going to go upwards and he'll be pater because it's derech aliyah. He's going up. And he hits somebody in the back, that's going to be pater. That's the first brisa. The second brisa said the reverse. La'achar of chayiv, l'fan of pater. Backwards he'll be chayiv, in front of him will be pater. So la'achar of chayiv means he's going back, but he's going back low down, right? So he's going below his shoulder, right? He's going like this, all the way backwards, and on the downswing is when he hits somebody, then he'll be chayiv. And on the fun of is on the upswing from the back. But before he's going downwards, he's going upwards over here, then he'll go, if he hits somebody on the upswing, then he'll be pater. That's why, but it's considered lefanav because he's going forward. And then the case where it says that he's going to be pater by both of them is in the case of when he went upwards to the forwards and upwards backwards, he'll be pater in both of them. And the case where it's chayiv in both of them is when downwards, both forward like this, and downwards all the way back in the back, that both will be chayiv. So that's the four cases. So when it says kol shev derech yudasa in the Mishnah, zeh haklal, kol shev derech yudasa goyla, mishleiv derech yudasa eni goyla, it's coming to say to include the cases of katzav. That's derech yudasa. If it's downwards, whether it's front or back, he's going to be goyla. And if it's shleiv derech yudasa, it's upwards, whether frontwards or backwards, then he will not go to galus. That's what the brisa is coming. That's what the zeh haklal is coming to say. It's coming to say what this brisa is. Now, let's say that this machlekes of this shaila of Rabavo as to shaila going up on a ladder and pushes down the rung, and the rung killed somebody. Let's say this is really machlekes tanam. What's the machlekes tanam? A guy was going up on a ladder, and a rung slipped from under him. Tani chada chayiv. One brisa says he's going to be chayiv galus. So tani yidach pater. And one brisa says you're pater. So l'chayra my lav hakamiflagi makes sense to say that there are the two brisas. One says chayiv, one says pater. They're arguing the following question. The Mar Savar you read the he. One says that in Rabbi Vo's case where one's going upwards but he banged down on the rung, that's called a Yerida. Mar Savar aliyah he, and the other one holds that who says his pater is considered aliyah. So you're basically saying that Rabbi Vo's shaila is telling machlekes tanam. Mar says like you don't have to say that's telling this machlekes. The kuli alihi. You could say that really everyone holds that it's considered an aliyah, and therefore
no galus.
And therefore, you would not go to galus. I have what's pshat in the brisa that says chayiv. V'leikasha kan li nizaken kan le galus. This is what you said before. What about the case of nizaken? In the case of nizaken, yeah, he's going to be chayiv, even though he was going upwards. right? But for outside, even though he was going upwards, he's not going to go to galus. But if he went down and hit somebody, he's going to be chayiv. And as a chari pashevas and baishas, right? He's going to be chayiv to pay the nizakim. Because by for nizakim, it doesn't matter whether it's shaygig, whether it's mazid, it doesn't matter other mud lailam. But for galus, it's considered derech aliyah, so it won't be chayiv galus. Ibay Seymour, if you want, you could say a different teretz. Havaha legalus. They're both talking about galus, whether you chayiv galus or not chayiv galus. And the Gemara is going to say two cases. The Gemara is going to say two cases where you can have it's considered going down, but only in one case of going down. V'lei kasha. Had esliya, had lo esliya. The case where it says he's chayev is where the rung got wormy. Okay, it's a wooden rung, and termites got into it, right? So it's weaker. It's weaker. And now when he stepped on it, the whole rung goes downwards a little. It bends in, and then it broke. That's going downwards. Then he's chayev galus. But if it was a solid,
what's the reason?
That's derech Yehuda. That's v'yapal alav.
But a regular hard one.
A regular hard one. That's derech aliyah.
Right. Okay.
And it'll be pater. Of Yibei Seima, if you want, you could say had v'had lo yisliya. It did not get wormy, but the different case is, how do you make a rung? You take two pieces of a ladder, you take two pieces of wood, you make holes in the wood every, say, foot or two, right? And then you stick a piece of wood into the hole on both sides, and you secure it, right? Now, what if it's loose? If that rung is loose, so the hole is 2 inches wide, but the rung is only 1 inch tall, right? It's going to shake around. So if it's loy mahadik, it's loose, then when you step on it, it's going to go downwards. And then it broke, that's considered derech Yehuda, and then it'll be chayav galus. But if it was tight, it was a 1 inch piece of wood in a 1 inch hole, right? Then it's derech aliyah, and it won't be chayav galus. Zakt Mishnah, Masdisen. Nishmat habarzal mikatai, if the piece of metal slipped from the handle. So a person has an axe or a hatchet, and I was just thinking about this. I went to my son-in-law's house when we went for supper there a couple of weeks ago. We missed Daf Yomi that night. We went to supper, and my son-in-law says to my 13-year-old, he says, "Here, you want this? It's an axe, like I don't know, like this tall off the ground, the big axe head, right? What was he? He was biking. It was Erev Rosh Hashanah." And he sees somebody he owes money to, so he pulls over to him. It's in Flatbush, and he says, "Here, I have my money for you." So the guy takes the money. He says, "Here, you want an axe?" And he hands him an axe. And my son-in-law's the guy when someone hands him an axe. He says, "Yeah." He takes it. And he's on a bike, so he's biking to the mikvah on Erev Rosh Hashanah with his axe. Okay, fine. Okay. So I have this axe sitting in the back of my yard now, and I was thinking about this. We're learning Makkos. This is mamish the case. It seems that it's very, very tight. The axe head is really tight on the handle. It seems pretty tight right now. So it's not. It's actually like it's kind of plastic or fiberglass or something.
Those days,
they're all
right,
different. They're all different.
Right. So now that's the case of the Mishnah. Nishmat habarz lemikatai, the piece of metal, or the axe head, slipped off the handle, v'harag, and it killed someone. Rabbi says that's not considered going to galus. A person does not go to galus for that. Even though it was derech Yehuda, and the Chacham say a person does go to galus. Now, in the the guy was chopping wood, and a piece of wood from the tree that he's chopping, not the axe head, a piece of wood jumps out and kills somebody, right? Rabbi says that he does go to galus. The Chacham say a person does not go to galus for that case.
Service.
Huh? Similar to Tzeres, same concept as Tzeres, right?
So the Zak call we said before doesn't apply to every case.
Well, so this is not either of those cases, right? And we're going to see in the Gemara in a second that's totally it's not a derech Yehuda, derech aliyah type of situation over here. In other words, both Rebbe and the Rabbanan would hold in whichever case they say goyla, it would have to still be derech Yehuda. But even if it's derech Yehuda, Rebbe would hold that if it's the axe head, you're pater, and the Chacham would hold that if it's jumped out of the wood that you're chopping, that you'd be pater, right? So what's going on over here? It says Shailin Hey Darshan the Psukim. Tanya, you learned in the Brisa. Amlam Rebbe Lecham. The Rebbe said to the Chacham, "Ne'emar v'nashal habarzal mi eitzai." The pasuk says. Vashiyaves re'il bayar. Somebody comes up to his friend in a forest, lachlev eitzim, to chop wood. V'nitcha yadav begarzen, and his hand pushes on the hatchet, lichros eitz to cut the wood, v'nashal habarzal min eitz, and the iron jumps from the wood.
Dislodged. Right?
Yeah. Umatzes reu and hit his friend. Umeis and he dies. He has to go to galus. The question is, there's a couple of ambiguous nouns over here. What's eitz? What's nashal? Gemara is going to explain that. That's what's going to happen.
Should be more careful. His friend doesn't know the wrong place at the wrong time. There's two ways to look at it.
His friend. So you said it has to be in a place where he's allowed to be, right? It has to be a yar. Yar is a makkah rishus for the nizik and the masek, right? And we say that it's.
What's his responsibility, though? I'm saying should be more careful that the axe was not of good nature.
I think that we generally say that the reason why the person who needs who goes to galus is because he should have been more careful. He should have had, and that's why he needs a kapara. But he's still not totally amazed. It's not totally amazed. So the Rebbe gives him a chance to have a kapara. Somebody who's amazed doesn't have the chance to go to galus and get a kapara, right? He's either going to get killed by Bezdin, right? If he's amazed, or if he doesn't, there were no Edom or Asra or whatever, then Rebbe Shem will take care of him. Okay, so Tanya will learn the Rebbe. Amalam Rabbi Lacham, Rabbi said to Cham, Chinamar v'nashal barzal mei eitzai. Does it say that the iron of the axe head fell off its wood? In other words, its handle. It doesn't say that. It says from the wood, right? So it's not talking about the falling off the wood of the handle. It's talking about
the tree being chopped.
The oid, and besides that, I'll give you another raya that I'm talking about, that the pasuk is talking about the tree. Nemar eitz lamata, v'nemar eitz lamal. In the pasuk, it says eitz twice. It says v'nashal habarza. Sorry, I went a little far. V'nitchi yadav agarzan lichrois ha'eitz, v'nashal habarza l'meneitz. V'nitchi yadav agarzan, his hand pushed the hatchet lichrois ha'eitz to cut the tree. Right? That eitz is for sure talking about the tree. That's not talking about the handle. And v'nashal habarzel meneitz, and then the barzel went off from the eitz. Well, if it says eitz over there, and that's for sure talking about the tree, then when it says eitz a couple of words later, it's for sure talking about the same eitz it was talking about a second ago, right? And that means it's talking about the tree also. It says eitz on the bottom and it says eitz on top earlier in the pasuk. Ma eitz amar lamala, just like the first eitz. Mina eitzim mispakeh is for sure talking about the tree that's being chopped. Af eitz amar lamata, so too the second eitz is mina eitzim mispakeh is talking about the tree that was being chopped. Amar Rav Chiya Rashi, Amar Rav Chiya Rashi, it said the name of Rav, V'shneim mikra echad darshu. They both darshaned the same pasuk and came to their opposite conclusions. It says v'nashal habarzal minaitz, excuse me. The barzal was nashal min ha'etz. Rebbe Savar Yeshem l'Masiris. Rebbe says that we darshan based on the spelling of the word, and the spelling of the word is different than the pronunciation of the word. Now, when we say v'nashal, we're sort of like sticking in an aleph over there to say it's a kamatz. Pretend it said vav nun aleph shin lamed. There's no real aleph there. We just put a kamatz there, right? We know that when we see this word, we have to read it v'nashal because we have a tradition, going back to Matan Torah, that you read this pasuk with a kamatz, right? But really, it's written v'nishal. There's no kamatz there. If you didn't have that, you'd say v'nishal. And v'nishal means that v'nishal habarz l'meitz means that it's going on grammatically means it's going on the axe head and the barzel sort of peeled off from the tree that was being chopped. So it peeled off a piece, and that piece went and hit its friend. Okay, I don't know the dictic well enough. Not a garb. The guy's chopping a tree, and the piece of the tree jumped out. It's from his actions. It's sort of like right. Same concept. That's what Rebbe holds. Rabbanan Savriyation Lemikra. Rabbanan hold that we darshan based on the pronunciation of the word, and v'nashal Korean, and we read it v'nashal that. And v'nashal is mashma. It's a verb that the barzel itself, it's going on the piece of metal itself, the axe head itself, and that jumped out on and hit his friend. So the Rebbe holds it's going on. The Rebbe holds it's going talking about the thing that the axe head did, and the Rabbanan hold it's going on the axe head itself. Rebbe holds, let me say it better. Rebbe holds it's the thing that the axe head caused. And the Rabbanan hold it's talking about the accent itself doing something. Really? You're telling me Rebbe holds that you make a drasha based on the spelling, not the pronunciation? Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayetz, Rabbi Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, and we have this Gemara in Sanhedrin all the way at the beginning. They all hold that you make the drasha based on the pronunciation, not based on the spelling. And for the Gemara, you're right. He really does hold Yeshem Lemikra, and that's why he said the Va'oid, that Nemra Eitz Lamativ and Nemra Eitz Lamala, Rashi calls that Gzera Shava, that you learn that from there, and that's really the main basis for where he learns it from. Okay, good? Okay, Shkayach.